Okay, sounds like David started the GoToWebinar. Let's see, it's 9:31. We'll call this meeting to order. It's the February 8th, 2024 Planning and Zoning hearing. Ready for roll call?
Chairman Hernandez,
Here.
Vice Chair Lindblom,
Here. I'm here.
Commissioner Arnett,
Here.
Commissioner Curley,
Here.
Commissioner Dan Zeisen, Commissioner Landau, Commissioner Lawrence, Commissioner Montoya, Commissioner Slasher.
Here.
Commissioner Swart.
Here.
Chairman, we have a quorum.
Thank you very much. First, we'll start with announcements. This meeting has been noticed in accordance with the Open Meeting Law, Arizona Revised Statutes 38-431. Agendas are available within 24 hours of each meeting in the Maricopa County Planning and Development Office and are also available on the Planning and Development website 1 week prior to hearing at www.maricopa.gov/planning. The staff reports prepared for each agenda item shall become a part of the permanent record for each case. With respect to hearing process, cases will be considered in the order they appear on the agenda unless otherwise agreed to by the commission. For each case, the applicant will be given a set amount of time to present. Anyone wishing to speak on a particular case shall fill out a speaker's card for in-person attendance or raise your hand within GoToWebinar. The amount of time allowed for speaking shall be at the discretion of the commission chair. Staff will provide the chairman with the names of persons who have registered and noted desire to comment and those registered participants who have raised their hand. The chairman will call on each named participant one at a time. The chairman will conduct the hybrid in-person and virtual public hearing according to the bylaws and according to the rules established by the chairman regarding public comment. Votes will be done by roll call vote only. The chairman will verbally identify the specific members responsible for all motions and seconds. All right.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
I'd like to announce that Montoya is on the phone.
Okay. Thank you.
Commissioner Montoya is on the phone.
All right. Seeing that we have no other matters, let's move on to the regular agenda. Will staff please present the cases?
Yes. Good morning, members of the commission. This is case number CPA 2019-009 and Z 2019-082, Village at Waddell. The applicant is requesting a comprehensive plan amendment of the White Tank Grand Avenue area plan land use designation from current single-family large lot to single-family suburban. Simultaneously, the applicant is requesting a zone change from Rural 43 to R110 RUPD on an 83-acre site located on the northwest corner of Citrus and Bethany Home Roads in the Glendale area. The purpose of the CPA and rezone is to accommodate a future single-family residential subdivision that will conceptually contain 221 lots with a density of 2.85 density units per acre. The RUPD overlay is to allow for smaller lots with reduced yards than what is typically found in R110 zoning district. In compensation, the applicant will set aside 16% of the site for open space, increase the lot size for lots adjacent to existing residences, reduce the height of homes adjacent to existing residents, and provide deep landscape buffers around the future subdivision. The staff supports the CPA and zone change with overlay request. These proposals are similar to what the requests that are approved in parcels east and southeast of the site that were zoned R110 RUPD. The applicant has addressed the concerns of local stakeholders, and the applicant has demonstrated in their CPA narrative report that this future community will meet the goals of both the White Tank Grand Avenue Area Plan and the county's Vision 2030 Comprehensive Plan. Therefore, staff recommends the commission adopt a motion to recommending approval of CPA 2019 and adopt a motion recommending that the Board of Supervisors approve Z 2019-082, subject to conditions listed in the staff report. This concludes my presentation. Thank you, members of the commission.
Thank you very much, Mr. Martell. All right. Is there any questions of staff by the commission? Is the applicant present? Wonderful. If you'd like to give us a presentation on the case, and please state your name for the record.
Hey, thank you. My name is Paul Gilbert. My address is 701 North 44th Street. I am here representing the property owner. The property owner is Medea Farms, sorry, and Ron Scott. They own the property. They are currently farming it, but have plans to develop this property later on. And with me is Kurt Valder, who's a planner in my office and who will be assisting me in the presentation. There are two cases. I'm going to present them together, acknowledging, of course, Mr. Chairman, they have to be voted on separately. Okay. With your permission, then I'll proceed. As staff noted, there are roughly 82 acres at the northwest corner of Bethany Home and Citrus Road shown on the screen. We're requesting both a comprehensive plan amendment and a companion zone change for R110 with an RUPD overlay. I don't want to repeat the staff report, but it's a very solid recommendation of approval as succinctly summarized previously by your staff. This site is in a prime location. It is just 1.5 miles from the Loop 303 and the major employment opportunities that exist there. And we're just 2.5 miles from Luke Air Force Base. Speaking of Luke, let me make a couple of comments there, because that's an important consideration I submit as we reason together today. Importantly, this proposed development is consistent with the base graduated density concept, which would allow a maximum density of up to 4 dwelling units on this piece of property. As you are aware, we're proposing less than 3. Luke Air Force Base also determined in their review of the project that the proposed development will not negatively impact their operations. You will hear me spend some time on this. I'm going to go into this a little bit more later in the presentation, but we are consistent with the recent, and that's an important point, with the recent rezoning cases that have taken place in the area. Staff does a good job of pointing these out to you and is a major justification for the very positive recommendation we have received from the staff. Refer to a couple of them: Allen Ranches, which is immediately to the southeast and kitty corner from us, similar density. Zanjero Trails, roughly a 1/2 mile west, and then Azure Canyon, which is a 1/2 mile to the south. The RUPD overlay allows for: 1, we are increasing the average lot size, focus on increasing the average lot size from 10,000 to 12,000 square feet. In fact, our lots are closer to an average of 14,000 square feet. We are also increasing the minimum landscape setbacks, particularly on the east and south along Bethany Home and Citrus Road. We are limiting the homes on the perimeter, lots to the north, south, and west to single story. All of these things and more have been requested by the neighbors. We've had 2 major meetings with all the neighborhood groups in the immediate area, and we have accommodated their requests. Importantly, we are also limiting these same perimeter lots to a minimum of 18,000 square feet, similar to those lots that are across the street from us on Bethany Home Road in the Russell Ranch community. As mentioned previously, we are concomitantly requesting an amendment to the White Tanks Grand Avenue plan. This request is to amend the land use plan from single family large lot to a density of between, which allows densities of 1 and 2 dwelling units per acre. We're proposing a single family suburban, which allows densities between 2 and 3. So it's important that we focus on the fact we are only requesting an increase of 1 dwelling unit per acre in the area plan, a very small increase. Here is our site plan. We spend a lot of time developing the site plan and working with the neighbors. And I want to spend some time on this site plan to show you the prodigious amount of changes we have made to the site plan. This case has been on the books since 2019, and we're now able to bring it forward. And I must say, we have made so many changes from the original submittal. So we're proposing a single family gated community consisting of 221 lots. This has been reduced significantly from the original Trios project that was submitted in 2019 that proposed 260 lots. So a major reduction. This plan allows for a variety of lot sizes ranging from 18,000 square feet to 7,000 square feet, which, as the staff report insightfully says, is a very important consideration for this case because the need for diversity of lot sizes in this area. The site plan provides for 13 acres of open space, includes both active and positive spaces. I'd like to quote the staff report because I think this is a good comment. A vast system of trails and sidewalks that will promote walking and interconnectivity from all of the lots to the centralized park area. The landscape areas will be provided along the site's perimeter, act as a buffer, and from the adjacent large lot residential properties of the area. The staff further report also says that this will enable the future developer to design a community that is in concert with the demands of the current home buyers in the neighborhood. Based on some of the comments that surfaced at our meetings with the neighborhood, I suspect you may hear that many of the neighbors prefer acre lots. There hasn't been any acre lot zoned in this area for a long period of time. The only acre lots really that are there are Clearwater Farms, and they've been there longer than I've been practicing law, and that's a considerable period of time. So there really isn't a market for acre lots. And there are many, many acre lots that are zoned and on the books that have yet to be developed, despite the fact that they've been entitled for a great period of time. So this project has really evolved ever since we took it over. We made many changes following the several meetings and discussions with community leaders. We've met with representatives, neighborhood representatives of Clearwater Farms, Russell Ranch, Cottonwood Estates, and Montana Farms. Many of the changes that are reflected on this plan, such as the 18,000 square foot lots on the north, south, and west perimeter, were done at the specific request of these neighborhood groups. The only ones that we're not putting the buffer on are the lots on our immediate east. There's a good reason for that. My client, Medina Farms, also owns that piece of property. So, and it was recently rezoned for the very type of zoning we're seeking. So here again, right across the street from us, we have similar zoning. We are restricting the homes on these larger lots to single story, again, at the request of the neighborhood. We are maintaining the existing drainage ditches around the perimeter in order to preserve the rural character of the community. And this in turn provides for wider landscape setbacks, as we noted earlier. We will also abandon 181st Avenue that runs right through the middle of our project. This will facilitate and ensure that we don't have access to the north to Clearwater Homes nor to Russell Ranch directly to the south. And I believe Russell Ranch is currently in process of discussing with the county. They're also abandoning 181st Avenue, which would be consonant with what we're proposing here. We're going to bury the power line running along Bethany Home Road, and we will restrict lighting on the site, consistent, of course, with the Maricopa County Code. And we've agreed that we will, any street lighting will be fully shielded. If we compare this plan, and this is maybe the most important part of my presentation, if we compare this plan with the surrounding zoning, it is highly compatible, as the staff report also comments, with the recent approvals in the vicinity, including, Kurt, I'm going to ask you to point out where these are. You got it?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Let me start with Allen Ranches and San Harold Trails. They're very close to our site shown on this map, and they include densities ranging from R16, R17, R18, R110, plus multifamily of R2 and R4, well above the density that we are proposing. Azure Canyon and Savannah Homes were approved for R110, and basically same density that we're proposing. And the property, as I noted before, immediately east of Citrus Road was approved for a combination of R110 and R118 on the periphery, which my client, Mr. Scott, owns as well. A couple of words with regard to the vision of the 2030 comprehensive plan. This plan and this request are supported by the comprehensive plan. Nothing is more boring than to review the comprehensive plan. That's when I put people to sleep. So I'm going to try to be very brief and just to point out a couple of salient points on the comprehensive plan. We're directing new urban development within the urban growth area. We're located right there. We're providing a mix of housing options consistent with the mandate of the plan. We're reducing impacts on existing rural land uses, which we are supporting by maintaining very wide landscape setbacks and retaining the existing drainage ditches located on the perimeter of the site. And as noted before, we're providing 18,000 square foot lots where we're adjacent to these uses. We are establishing a well-planned and organized subdivision rather than the wildcat lot splits that have taken place all too frequently in this area. A quick comment about the White Tank Grand Avenue area plan. Again, our proposal is highly consistent and compatible with the adopted White Tank Grand Avenue area plan. Importantly, and it's hard to see up there, but you see a circle on that plan. That is growth area B. That is identified on the map. We are in growth area B. This project will increase the housing stock within that area that is supported by appropriate levels of service and infrastructure. We are maintaining the existing drainage ditches. I've mentioned that before. Additionally, the 18,000 square foot lots we are providing on the periphery create a very appropriate density and transition from the adjacent uses to the smaller lots on the interior of the site. Now, let me address just briefly neighborhood concerns. Based on our meetings with the neighborhood, you may have a discussion about traffic, we want to hit that head on. That is the concern of some of the neighbors. There is a traffic study on file. This traffic study was submitted with the proposed 260 lot homes for the Trigos project. We're proposing 221. So there's a 40 lot difference. But we're using that plan to show that traffic is not a problem here. All intersections are expected to operate at an acceptable level of service of C or better. There's one exception, and that's the Bethany Home Road and Citrus Road intersection. And that has a problem only during the PM peak hour. But this intersection, even with that, will have a level of service D. Now, if you got a D in high school, your parents probably weren't very proud, but level of service D is the level of service probably for the majority of the intersections in the entire Phoenix area. All the rest are C, but the traffic study notes that if we add a simple addition of a dedicated right turn lane from Bethany Home Road to Citrus Road, that will improve the movements to a level of service C. Fortunately, my client, Medina Farms, owns that parcel and can make that transition. So basically, if we put in that, we have a level of service of C, which is a very acceptable level of service for the traffic area. So in closing, I know you'll be happy I'm wrapping this up. We've been working on this project for a long time. We've come a long way from the original R17 application. We've worked with the neighborhood leaders to get where we are and present a plan that is consistent and compatible with the surrounding area. The site is also an ideal location for increased residential development, being just 1.5 miles from the Loop 303 and the concomitant major employment area along Loop 303 and Luke Air Force Base proximity. Our request is consistent with the comprehensive plan and growth area B of the White Tank Grand Avenue area plan. We've established, I think, very effectively, pardon my hubris, an appropriate transition from the rural properties to the north, south, and west, and we're consistent with the zoning that is immediately to the east. We are providing 18,000 square foot lots on the perimeter, limiting homes to single story, preserving the drainage ditches, and creating wide landscape setbacks, wider than most of the other projects in the immediate area. In conclusion, as the staff points out, there will be no adverse impacts to the area due to this project and the increase in traffic. That concludes my presentation. Be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Gilbert. Are there any questions from the commission for the applicant? I got one question for you. You stated that you guys started working on this case in 2019 and have made several changes from 2019 until now. What was the crux of those changes? Was that due to community input?
Yes.
Okay.
It was community input. We've met with every major homeowners association in the area, and those changes have been reduced in density, a buffer of 18,000 square foot lots, single story homes. I've regaled you with all those before, but those were the.
I just wanted to clarify that. So thank you. Thank you, Mr. Gilbert.
Good question.
Okay, hearing none from anybody else on the commission, we'll proceed with in-person speakers, and then we'll allow those registered online to speak. After public comment, we will allow time for rebuttal by the applicant. So it looks like we have several people here that are interested in speaking regarding this case. Just a couple notes before we start calling people up here. If you would please limit your time to 2 minutes or less, and please Don't reiterate what somebody else has already said. Let's just keep it to new topics. All right, number 1, we got Howard Thorpe. Thank you for coming down this morning. If you'd please state your name for the record.
My name's Howard Thorpe. I live in Russell Ranch, and I've lived there since 2002. I've seen a lot of development, Azure Canyon, Allen Ranch, et cetera. Opposed all of those lot sizes. They're way too small. I have a question for Mr. Gilbert. How many of the 221 lots are 7K or 8K square foot? Don't take up my time, please, but that's a question for you. 181st he talked about is potential abandonment. That will not happen. It's a transitionary road between Bethany Home and Camelback. It's a connector road. The county will not approve abandoning that. Okay? So the traffic that comes from this new development that avoids the traffic on Bethany, between Bethany and Citrus, will come down 181st, right through Russell Ranch, down to Camelback, and then either cut through on Denton over to Citrus and go south or north, or go all the way down to Camelback. So the people that are going to be moving into those lots are going to go right through Russell Ranch in all likelihood to avoid that traffic during commute times and high school drop-off times. I'm also opposed to this because the county is really losing its appeal. When we have all of these, like I said, 2002 I've lived here, all of these new developments on all around us, okay? Clearwater Farms is horse country, 1 to 5 acres just north of this development. Russell Ranch is 1/2 to 1 acre lots, okay? So we're losing that appeal. There's no transition here. There's small lot sizes on all sides of us. And I have other questions regarding environmental studies. Has the Litchfield Park Elementary School District been aware of this new development? Is APS going to provide power? Do they have a memo approving power to this new development? Has the Glendale Water District approved providing water to this new development like the surrounding developments? And I'm also concerned about all the development around us with vandalism, burglaries, they're on the upswing, and as well as potential for drugs and other nefarious activity. With that, I'll leave it there, and I hope that Mr. Gilbert will answer the questions regarding the 7 to 8K number of lot sizes of the 221. He's talked about the 18,000 square foot on the perimeter, but I didn't hear anything about how many lots are the smaller ones. But thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Thorpe. All right, up next, Barbara, sorry, I can't read it, Ratty. Good morning. Thank you for coming down. If you could please state your name for the record.
Thank you. My name's Barbara Ratty. I live on Citrus and Maryland, so it's about 10 lots to the north of where this property is. Now, we moved out there, myself, my family and myself moved out there because we went for wide open spaces and irrigation. Now, I don't know about the water that's going to go to this whole new housing development, but I'm worried about my irrigation water that I moved out here for. Will they somehow be dragging some of our water from all of our properties that have pastures for horses and cows and farm animals? I don't know about that, but that's my concern at this moment. I understand that you guys have tried many times, it's been tried many times to buy the areas around us to make more houses in a smaller place. And I know they've talked to, from what I hear, they've talked to all these neighbors. Have they talked to us neighbors that have the property? I know you talked to oh shucks, you talked to the, oh, I can't think of who it was, but did you actually talk to the people that bought these properties to have their horses, to have room? And so you're coming in, encroaching into our properties, into our lives. And I know you sound like you've been so respectful and you're kindful and you're thinking of the people around us, but I just don't think you're thinking about me and my 3 acres and my horses and my animals. And so you guys have taken away all of our beautiful farming, flower farms. You've taken away all the farming structure that's been out there. And I just don't believe that everybody is so for this little, I mean, it looks good by having the big houses around a bunch of little tiny houses. And I think that's just a facade that you're making us think that there's not so many houses there, but there are a lot of houses that are going to be put in this property. I'm just a little person that lives out there that wanted to be open spaces with irrigation, seeing our animals out in the out around us, and you guys are taking it away. And I just a little property owner out there that's all my neighborhoods that I talk to that are north of that lot, all of us with this property, we're not happy about this. Anyways, I'm just saying.
Thank you very much for your comments. Okay, up next, Dana, I think it's Lang. Good morning. Thank you for coming down. If you could please state your name for the record.
Thanks for having me. My name is Dana Large, and I live just north of the property in question on Ocotillo. And my concern is to keep the continuity of the current rule that we have. If we could just keep it all the way down to Bethany. I know it's going to be developed, but if we could just keep it at 1 acre properties. And the gentleman who just spoke, he was incorrect because it's Citrus and Glendale. They're building a 1 acre development with homes in there, approximately 40 homes, and that's been in the last 2 years. So there has been 1 acre development in there. And then I know you said you spoke to the community leaders, but I've got 60 signatures, and I'll get more, that are opposed to this. One is in Montana Farms, and nobody I've spoke to in Montana Farms has spoken to the community leader, because so far everybody who has signed the petition in there is against it. A couple of them got a card and were notified about the development, and they go, we've been fighting this since 2019. So I don't know what community leaders he is talking to, but like Barbara said, he's not talking to the people. And my concern is some of the things, light pollution, irrigation disputes will be a big one, because the county, according to the paper, has nothing to do with that dispute. So it'll have to be a civil matter, which means that'll cost us money. So dust complaints, because people have horses out there, they rope their cows, they train their horses in their arenas. So that will be. Smells, like Blue Sky Farms on Indian School Road had to leave, just like Hickman's Farms had to leave at 91st Avenue Northern years ago, which I live next to. Vandalism goes up when you get more people. And there's only large lots around the perimeter, which is 45 of them, which truly isn't a large lot. And let's see, on the inside is tiny homes, basically, is what it is. So we're worried about the conflict with the different lifestyles, because when you get city people and you get rural people, there's always a conflict. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you very much for coming down. Appreciate it. All right, is there anybody else who would like to speak? David, is there anybody online?
There's no one online.
All right. Mr. Gilbert, I'll give you just 2 quick minutes to provide a rebuttal.
Well, that's a lot of questions to have to answer in 2 minutes. Let me go through it very quickly. First of all, the first speaker wanted to know the breakdown of the homes. By the way, we don't hide that. That's on the site plan. We submitted it. Let me give you that. 7,000 square feet, 78, 8,000 square foot, 88, 9,000 square foot, 10, and 18,000 square foot, 45. So that is consistent with what we're saying for providing a majority of the homes. I don't know what to say about 181st Avenue. I've been told by the leaders of Russell Ranch that they are pursuing it. It doesn't have a direct bearing on this, but our facility, if approved, will help that because we're eliminating 181st Avenue. We've been regaled with the accusation that there's no transition. I don't know what more I can do to show that we're providing a transition. We have 18,000 square foot lots all along the border, and we didn't limit it just to 18,000 square feet. We also agreed to do single story. So we've done more than I think would be required to provide the very transition that we're accused of not having. I don't want to spend a lot of time on water and so on. We have a will serve letter for the project. I think that handles that issue. Excuse me. And then we've been accused of interfering with the irrigation water. We're leaving all the irrigation ditches, so the water will still stay there. Well, I'm out of time, but there's a large area that surrounds the site. The best we could do, which I think is reasonable, is to meet with the neighborhood leaders from each one of the subdivisions, and that we did, and got feedback, and that feedback is reflected in the changes we've made to the plan. Thank you. Sorry, I went a little over time.
Oh, you're good. Thank you, Mr. Gilbert. All right, with that, we'll close the public forum. Okay, so I got, if anybody from the commission has some comments, I just want to remind everyone that this is two separate cases. So if there is anybody willing to make a motion, we do have to have two separate cases, but I'll open it up to anybody on the commission for comments.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Commissioner Schlosser.
actually I have some unique insight on this particular case. First of all, I've been doing this for a long time, a few years shy on Mr. Gilbert's, but time as an attorney, but I've been following this particular property for years now, and the amount of planning that they've done and what they've presented today.
Commissioner
is
Schlosser,
great.
could you move your microphone? Because I don't think they can hear you in the back.
Oh, I'm sorry, everybody. I guess I'll sort of start over. I have some unique insight. I've been following this site, but with this exact plan that's up on the screen right now, Mr. Gilbert may have actually done the presentation 20 some years ago in Levine when I was serving on the Levine Village for the city of Phoenix. And if you go back to the one with the site plan. So I can cite the exact 80-acre parcel with the southwest corner of 43rd Avenue and Dobbins in Levine. And I thought it was crazy planning at the time, surrounded by acre lots and larger lot horse properties. And they did this exact planning, just like they did here with these 18,000 square foot lots buffering the surrounding property owners. And at the time, and again, it was 20 some years ago, but I always thought to myself, how is this thing going to turn out? Because it's not typical planning to do this. And then limiting it to one-story properties. And if you drive by this project today, it literally does exactly what was intended here. And obviously there's more lots in the center of it, but it does truly create a buffer. And it turned out to be a nice subdivision. It took a while for the outer perimeter lots to be built on because because of the larger lots. But my point is, it's happened once since I've been doing this, and it turned out to be a nice project, and everybody in the area seems to be happy with it. The next thing I'll say is, and like I said, I'm a West Valley boy and follow all kinds of things out in this side of town, but I remember when Russell Ranch was going through the process, and there was opposition to Russell Ranch at the time from folks that had 1 acre to 5 acre horse properties. They were opposed to the 18,000 square foot or half acre square foot lots because of the same arguments. So I guess my point there being, as Mr. Gilbert pointed out, this project's 1.5 miles from the Loop 303. dozens and dozens of newly constructed tilt-up industrial buildings and major progress. And this is in the path of growth. And I don't know how, after working on something for 5 years on and off, that the community or whoever's been working on this thing can concede or do any more than what's been doing there. And with that, I guess I'd like to hear what everybody else has to say, but I'll be in favor of this application.
Thank you, Commissioner Schlosser. I guess I got a few things to say about it as well. I agree. I mean, I'm not familiar with the site in Levine, but I also think that this is excellent planning to try to bridge the gap between rural areas and subdivisions. I live in a rural area as well, and a subdivision like this close to my house, I think would be a nice fit. I know there's a big concern with traffic. I think one of the ways to resolve traffic is by development. The developers will widen the roads and help with that. So, yeah, I agree with Commissioner Schlosser that I am in favor of this project as well. Is there anybody else online that would like to speak regarding this case? All right, hearing none, I will see if anyone is ready to entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Commissioner Schlosser.
make a motion to approve case number CPA 2019-009 as presented.
I second that motion.
Thank you. We have a motion by Commissioner Schlosser and a second by Commissioner Montoya. Are there any comments regarding the motion? Hearing none. Rosalie, can we get a roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Arnett,
Yes.
Commissioner Curley,
Yes.
Commissioner Lawrence,
Yes.
Commissioner Montoya,
Yes.
Commissioner Swart,
Yes.
Commissioner Schlosser,
Yes.
Vice Chair Limblom,
Yes.
Chairman Hernandez.
Yes.
Chairman, we have a motion recommending approval by a vote of 8-0.
Thank you, Rosalie. Moving on to to agenda item number 2, we will entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Schlosser.
I'd like to make a motion to approve case number Z 2019-082 as presented.
Thank you. We have a motion for recommendation of approval by Commissioner Schlosser. Do we have a second?
Commissioner Lawrence will second.
I'm sorry, who was that?
Commissioner Lawrence.
All right, we have a second by Commissioner Lawrence. Do we have any comments regarding the motion? All right, hearing none. Rosalie, can we get a roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Arnett,
Yes.
Commissioner Curley,
Yes.
Commissioner Lawrence,
Yes.
Commissioner Montoya,
Yes.
Commissioner Swart,
Yes, I'm getting a lot of background. I don't know if anybody else hears it.
yes, thank you.
I'm hearing it as well.
Commissioner Schlosser,
Yes.
Vice Chair Limblom,
Yes.
Chairman Hernandez.
Yes.
Chairman, we have a motion recommending approval by a vote of 8-0.
Thank you very much, Rosalie. All right, moving on. Regular agenda item number 3. Staff, we're ready to present the case when you are.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. Good morning. KC 2023-119 is a request for a zone change with overlay from Rural 43 to IND2 IUPD for AES West Wing 2. The site is approximately 8.9 acres located at the southeast corner of Happy Valley Road and El Mirage Road in the Peoria area. The applicant is requesting this zone change to entitle the third phase of a proposed battery energy storage system or BESS facility Two previous phases of the project have already received entitlements per KC 2020-093, which rezoned adjacent parcels to the east and south to IND2 IEPD. Plans of development were subsequently approved administratively. Likewise, the applicant has submitted a POD for this phase of the project as well. Administrative approval of the POD will be contingent upon prior approval of this zone change request. The applicant is requesting an IEPD overlay to vary some of the IND2 development standards. These variations would be similar to those approved for the previous phases and would address concerns from Arizona Fire and Medical Authority. First, the applicant requests to establish a use-specific setback of 100 feet for the battery housing units. Second, the applicant requests to remove the requirement for on-site parking, as there will not be regular personnel on-site. Instead, occasional maintenance staff will park along the edge of the internal drive aisle to service equipment as needed. For screening, the applicant proposes a unique intrusion detection system to be installed atop the 8-foot perimeter wall. This system will include infrared beam columns measuring 6 feet in height, bringing the total screening height to 14 feet, consistent with previous phases. Additional requests with the IEPD include allowing ingress and egress by forward and reverse motion of a vehicle and allowing, at minimum, stabilized decomposed granite for on-site circulation. Similar variations were approved for the previous phases and have been requested to keep the development standards as consistent as possible. The applicant complied with the requirements of the citizen review process. Since the nearest existing residences are just beyond 300 feet from the site, the applicant voluntarily increased their outreach to properties within 500 feet. To date, staff has received one letter of opposition from a resident of the nearby Coldwater Ranch subdivision, located northwest of the property across Happy Valley Road. The resident expressed concerns regarding the potential hazards of a BESS facility and requested that these risks and their impact on public safety be considered. The applicant was notified of the opposition and promptly reached out to the concerned resident. No further correspondence from this or other neighbors has since been received, and no comments have been received from areas of interest, including the City of Peoria or the AFMA. Staff supports the applicant's request. This third phase of AES West Wing would not differ substantially from the previous phases. As such, staff finds the request compatible with surrounding land uses and consistent with development patterns. The project is unlikely to produce significant externalities such as noise or smoke or substantial visual impacts. The facility will be well screened and the batteries will be fully enclosed. The BESS will connect to existing electrical infrastructure located south of the site, and the nature of the proposed use is pursuant to making the electrical grid more reliable and more supportive of renewable energy sources. With that, staff recommends the commission adopt a motion recommending that the Board of Supervisors approve Z 2023-119 subject to conditions A through H as outlined in the staff report. At this time, I would be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Schlimm. Is there anybody from the commission that has any questions for staff? All right, hearing none. Is the applicant here? Good morning. If you would please state your name for the record.
Yes, good morning, Chairman, members of the commission. My name is Ben Graff with Corals and Brady. I'm here today representing AES Clean Energy LLC. We are very excited to be back before this commission. I'll get into some of those details, but the last time you saw AES was in 2021 before this commission as we discussed what is primarily phase 1 and phase 2 of this same project. And today we're here to talk about phase 3. So just a little bit about our team. Today we have Troy Bushman here from AES. We also have the entire NEI team here from our design and engineering. You've met many zoning attorneys up here, but we can't really do much without our teams and specifically planners and paralegals. So Josh Mike, our senior land planners here today, as well as our paralegal, Chrissy Jung. I do want to make a note and thank Nick Schlimm and county staff for all the work that's been put into both of these phases. There's a lot of coordination with this type of a battery energy storage development, not only with county staff, but also the Arizona Fire and Medical Authority. We just really appreciate Nick's ongoing input, and the project, as I will discuss, is a far better project today than what was originally proposed because of county staff and also the fire authority. So one of the things I think I'd like to see if I was a commissioner, with a company is that it's not their first rodeo. And so what we have here today is, again, our second major presentation before the Planning and Zoning Commission. AES is a global leader in energy storage and renewable energies. They've focused their entire product line and their facilities on placing first responder and community safety first, and we'll get into some of those details. So the site itself is at the southwest corner of West Happy Valley Road and North El Mirage Road in Maricopa County. This is currently zoned RU43, but as you can see, and this phase is 58.5 megawatts of storage capacity and output. But as you can see, this is a very important slide just to kind of recap where we've been and where we're heading. So I want to start by thanking the Commission for their support and their vote in 2021 to basically provide approval for an identical request on the two phases in green. So as you can see, approximately 18 acres was rezoned in 2021 for a battery energy storage facility. We came before this commission with the rezoning request and a similar overlay to provide the ability to increase setbacks to make the site more efficient. And that phase 1 and 2 in green is now currently under construction. There's a very positive story behind even getting to the building permits. But mainly one of the things that I'll get into great detail is probably different from anything else that this commission has reviewed and approved. We worked very hard to basically make everything, even through the Board of Supervisors approval, subject to final review and approval by the fire authority. That is a key theme throughout this. In fact, in 2021, when we brought this before the commission, this was a relatively newer type of request for the county. The county has now seen multiple of these. The Arizona Fire and Medical Authority, then Chief Criver, now Chief Olmsted, have worked with these applicants to make these very safe facilities and sites. And specifically between 2021, when we brought this case to you, and now, the AFMA now has a handout that they provide to the county. And I'm proud of that handout because a lot of the requirements that AFMA is asking battery energy storage applicants to include came from our case, came from our ongoing meetings with the AFMA and the fire authority. So I believe that, we've been a part of making this overall industry more efficient, safer, and really appreciate the commission's input as we've moved through this process. So today we are requesting approval for the final phase of this same development. This will finish the puzzle piece. This will create the last section of industrial IND2 zoning and will allow for a fully functioning, fully circulating battery energy storage facility on all three of these parcels. Really, the purpose of the next slide is just to provide a bit of documentation on when this all occurred. But the first two phases I showed you in green are now under construction, with the exception of a subpart for West Wing 2A. That's still going through permit review. But West Wing 1A and 1B are under construction, and you can actually go out there and see how the facility has come to fruition. These next aerial maps, if I can just get the slide to move, there we go. Next one's a little bit closer. These next aerial maps show what's under construction. So just happened to be that Google Maps did a nice update recently, provided us to update our aerial maps, and you can actually see the first two phases under construction. You can see how the cubes or battery units are laid out on those two. And most significantly, and I'll get into detail on this, you can see how far set back the future batteries are from the Coldwater Ranch neighborhood to our north. This is a bit of information on all of our neighbors and surrounding areas. We have always been hyper conscious and aware of the Coldwater Ranch Neighborhood Association to our north, and then, of course, now to our northeast for the first or for the final phase. We work closely with staff, and we received some comments from commissioners. One request from Commissioner Schlosser to increase our notification radius. Now, the county requires 300 feet notification. That hits some of the homes. The concern was that a 300-foot notification might not capture enough of the homes. So our team voluntarily increased our notification for this specific case to 500 feet. That included more homes. Then we worked with Nick Schlimm and made sure that the county notifications also went out to a 500-foot notice. So we did take extra care to make sure there was notification. The feedback from the neighborhood was ironically almost identical from 2021. So in 2021, we received one letter of concern. Our team reached out to that homeowner, answered all their questions. That homeowner did not continue with the opposition, did not show up at the hearings, and we moved through with unanimous approvals. This time around for the phase, we also received one letter of concern. That letter was also forwarded to the Coldwater Ranch HOA. So the HOA received a letter from us. The applicant also received a letter from the concerned neighbor. Our team also reached out to that concerned neighbor, answered some of their questions via email, offered a virtual or in-person meeting, and we didn't hear back. And I can't speak for whether that neighbor's here or online, but I do believe that hopefully we've addressed those questions. Probably the most important thing to take from our neighborhood map, if you will, is the APS West Wing substation to our south. So if you're wondering why, of course, this project is called West Wing 1, West Wing 2, West Wing 2B, it's because the entire land planning exercise and target for where these very necessary and much needed battery energy storage projects must be located is that they must be located near a substation. So it adds a different layer when you're doing the land use analysis in terms of zoning, in terms of compatible uses and neighbors. We also need to be near a substation. So when you look at this larger map, it has been the logical conclusion moving through this process that, of course, not only phase 1 and 2, but now this final phase 3 would be located just north of the substation. Now, why is that? It's because if you're not located next to a substation, the power line infrastructure to bring power to, charge power, and then distribute the power is significant. It would require intensive line siting, potentially condemnation through the Arizona Corporation Commission or other authorities of private land. When you are located next to a substation, as most of these facilities are, you reduce that, if you will, land waste and encumbrances, and you incredibly reduce the amount of transmission lines, also the amount of transmission lost. We're able to actually protect and store more energy. Just a quick look at what the zoning map looks like today. Thanks to the commission's and the supervisor's approval in 2021, you can see the first two phases are now indicated in gray as industrial IND2. And of course, the request before you today for a rezoning would bring that third parcel 100% into line compatibility. Again, just the next step in the development for this area. As Mr. Slim pointed out, not only are we requesting the rezoning from RU43 and IND2, but probably even more importantly, we have the IUPD overlay. That overlay has allowed staff to work with us and to require what are appropriately above and beyond development standards that are also now mirrored by the fire authority as requirements for these types of projects. So one very poignant example is whereas the industrial zoning district would have minimal setbacks for the overall development, you will see here that we have a requirement of a minimum of a 100-foot setback between the property line and any battery. That is something that is now memorialized in our IUPD. Even if we wanted to, we couldn't go back on that guarantee because it's going to be locked into our zoning. So from an overall site planning standpoint, in blue is the site plan molded into the existing site plans for the first two phases. This site plan provides full site circulation. In fact, without this puzzle piece, the circulation that the fire authority wants and needs for their overall development can't happen. So our roadways and our internal circulation allow all three phases to be interconnected for fire to access off of Happy Valley Road or El Mirage. And it allows a fire authority, an employee, a maintenance crew to travel between the three phases. That's not technically currently possible without the completion of the puzzle piece. That internal circulation is very important to the fire authority and to the overall functioning. Now, of course, for the plant, the importance here is the additional 58.5 megawatts of power that was anticipated for phase 3. Overall, what you're seeing here is an evolution of technology. And I think this is a good point for me to talk about one of the safety themes that is prevalent throughout all of this. What you're seeing here in phases 1 and 2 is a technology that, when approved, was far superior and better than what we've seen in prior years. And now the technology for phase 3 is even better. And the technology is not only focused on efficiency of energy storage, efficiency of energy output, but most importantly on safety to first responders and safety to the community. As I presented to the commission in 2021, there was a significant battery energy storage fire incident known as the McMeekin incident in April of 2019. AES wants to openly discuss these types of incidents, these types of issues. The most, I guess the most tragic aspect, of course, of that incident was that 4 firefighters were injured. And it had to do a lot with the way that the batteries were configured and the way the technology was configured at the time. That technology has been completely eradicated and updated. And I testified to this commission in 2021 how those significant changes were already in place for phases 1 and 2. So that technology that's safe for first responders is already going into place in 1 and 2, but it's even better. And the quick footnote, because I think it's a poignant question, the quick footnote of what has changed in the technology is, at the McMeekin incident, it was necessary for a firefighter to approach one of these cubes or containers and physically open the container to suppress the fire. That resulted in a backdraft incident and the incredibly tragic injury to those first responders. What you're seeing now is a complete shift from that to a type of technology that allows us to not only monitor, but also put out the fires remotely. And even if first responders need to put physical water onto the batteries, they do so from a distance. There's no longer that need or any reason for someone to approach a unit that's under fire. So I just wanted to point that out. And as we go through all these phases, that technology, all the safety issues, all of that has gotten much, much better. Now, because we've started coordinating as early as 2021, but on this case more than a year ago, once again with the fire authority and specifically Chief Olmsted with AFMA, we've been able to already incorporate into our planned site plan some of the things that the AFMA have required. So one of the things we learned even after the Board of Supervisors was that the AFMA needed a lot more room for fire truck staging. So, yes,
hold on
please.
1 second. Someone online, can you please mute? We're getting a lot of feedback. Sorry, go ahead.
No worries, no worries. I'm just glad it's not me on my home computer. It's usually me doing that, so no problem. So as you can see on this site plan, the green areas are fire staging areas. So this is something that specifically Chief Olmsted and AFMA has requested to be built into our site plan so that they can stage multiple fire trucks on site without interference with walls, the battery units, anything else like that. My major point is that we have not come this far without ongoing and increased communication and coordination with the fire authority. And the other thing that you can see on here are all of the setbacks, the required 100-foot setbacks. Now, probably the more important question than what's on site is how does this all affect the existing neighbors, which we've been acutely aware of. So if you look at this exhibit, you can see that the phase that's already under construction, the closest home is 374 feet between a battery and a home. The next is 445 feet. And from the phase that we are requesting your approval for today, the closest home is 492 feet away from an existing battery. So because of the, if you will, voluntary 100-foot setbacks, the other setbacks built into the plan, we have pulled these batteries much further back from the association. Did you want me to pause again? Or?
Yeah. David, can you see who that is online? Can we mute them here, or can you mute them from your computer?
Unfortunately, they're not connected through the computer, so I don't see who it is, and so I don't have access. Sorry.
Okay, thank you. I guess we'll just keep going.
Yep, no worries. Just as you would look for elevations of homes or a multifamily building, I just wanted you to get an idea on this final phase of what a BESS unit looks like. It's very different from just the technology alone from what this looks like at first glance. It's some kind of a storage container, but it's a highly sophisticated container that holds the batteries. And again, this is now, if you will, a tight fit. There's no ability or need for a human being to walk inside of this, nor can they. This is fully functioned from fire suppression off-site. And again, if a first responder needed to resort to using the on-site fire hydrants, which yes, is a redundancy after many other redundancies, they would be able to do so from a distance. We have no need or expectation for anyone to approach these in a case of an emergency. Just an aerial view of what these units look like. And there is currently slated approximately 60 of these units in the new phase. Just a really quick note, kind of why we're all here. So how did we get here? What is the purpose of all of this? Why is there such a demand? Well, this is because of a partnership with APS. And while they're not technically the applicant before you, we can't do this without APS and APS getting into a power purchase agreement with us. APS set a goal for 100% carbon-free energy by 2050, and that requires APS to have 850 megawatts of battery energy storage by 2025. So literally on APS's portfolio, I'm sure someone from APS is watching this hearing today, they are waiting piece by piece to be able to meet that battery energy storage goal. Why is it important? Well, when you see rolling blackouts in Texas and other states, that is because of the lack of redundancies in things like battery energy storage. This is incredibly important to the future and sustainability of energy dependency in Arizona. And we're very excited that we can play a large piece in that. But this is just as much an APS application at the end of the day as it is from AES. I touched on most of these and Nick did a great job, just pointing out that not only the 100-foot setback, but just for lack of a better legal term, a really cool feature of this site is our infrared intrusion detection. So you've got the 8-foot wall, and then you have these very unintruding pylons about every 200 or 300 feet. They're just like poles that come up from the wall. Those have an infrared kind of laser grid that let us know about any immediate entry. So why is that nice for the neighbors? It means no barbed wire. It means right across the street from our Coldwater Ranch neighborhood, we have a great looking landscape setback. We have a great looking wall. We don't have barbed wire or other intrusion things. So that's why that's an important development standard that we have in there. This literally may be my most important slide because this packs in all the history behind this and why I am very comfortable on AES's reputation, my reputation in the community, my firm's reputation, guaranteeing you that this is a safe development for first responders in the community. And I will credit Commissioner Schlosser for what you see in blue. So in 2021, working with AFMA, specifically Commissioner Schlosser, as well as the community, there were ongoing concerns about, is the technology to a point where it's safe enough? Is it getting safer and safer? What happens if these do catch on fire? How do we not repeat the McMeekin incident? All of those things that I've testified in the past and will continue to testify today. And one of the biggest concerns was, well, what happens after Planning and Zoning Commission? What happens after the Board of Supervisors? how do those of us that want to ensure the safety of this still keep our hands around this? And so honestly, Supervisor Hickman and Commissioner Schlosser got together and drafted this stipulation that you see in blue. And this was known as stipulation H in the first phase. And we absolutely reached out to Nick and asked him to include it in this final phase. So what did this stipulation do? It essentially does something I haven't seen in any of my other zoning cases. It says, Planning Commission, Board of Supervisors, whatever you do approve, we appreciate that. AFMA is saying this, we appreciate that. But we, the fire authority, have final say over this entire project. We have to issue a written letter after we've seen the tests, after we've reviewed the site plan, after we've determined if our first responders will be safe. We make the final call and you have to get a letter. So what did that result in? Because that's part of the data that we don't have until today. So on phase one, the site plan that this commission saw was for 200 megawatts of output. By the time the Board of Supervisors approved that case and AFMA did months, actually more than a year of review, we actually went down from 200 megawatts to 156. And the reason was we had to remove batteries in order to provide better setbacks per the chief and fire suppression equipment, and most importantly, fire staging areas. So we were happy, this is our testimony today, we were happy to give up those extra batteries, that extra transmission. We are selling less power to APS today because the AFMA had final authority and then did issue that letter. So the stipulation worked as planned in 2021, and we are excited that it's part of our application today as well. I have multiple slides on safety, fire safety. I know I've gone for a while. I can pull these up to help answer questions, but I do want to be respectful, Chairman, of the commission's time. So I can stop for now, and I can certainly pull up some other slides to discuss other issues or answer questions.
Yeah, I think that's probably a good idea. I think we can open it up for now, and then we'll give you some time for rebuttal, and I'll probably have to go through those slides as well.
Absolutely.
So. All right, does the commission have any questions for the applicant? No, I don't believe we have anybody from the public. David, is there anybody online?
There's no one online wishing to speak.
Okay. Do you want to keep this open, or do you want to? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Commissioner Schlosser, go ahead.
Yeah, if everybody could just indulge me. First of all, I've got eye problems, so, and I normally speak off of the cuff, but I've got notes here. This case is near and dear to my heart. I've spent with phase 1 and 2 and now 3, spent hours and hours and hours on this thing. And I wasn't going to bring it up, but I guess in full disclosure, since Mr. Graff brought it up, one of those 4 firefighters that were almost vaporized was my nephew, my sister's son. He was about 23 or 25 years old at the time. The technology has improved dramatically since then. No doubt about that. They can't enter it. So the public safety concern or the first responder concerns not there as it was back when the McMicken accident happened. And then secondly, just to be crystal clear, just like Mr. Graff said, they have, and then spending all this time, they've followed every rule. They've done exactly what they've said they're going to do. They've kept me fully informed. We've had countless Zoom meetings with engineers and paid experts and phone calls and emails, and now we got problems. What do I do? Speak louder? This one works? Nope. story of my life. Luke, I am not your father.
Yeah, turn off your microphone. Speak loud.
Test. Test. Got it fixed now? You want to try yours?
Hello? Can everyone hear me? Nope, now nobody can hear me. Let me take your mic.
I can hear you.
I can hear you.
Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. Anyways, my point there, and I'm reading from notes just so I don't miss anything. So if everybody could please indulge me for a minute. My point there with Mr. Graff, they've been perfect to work with, followed all the rules, done exactly what county staff and whoever else up the food chains asked them to do. And the technology and the safety of these things are much better than they were, and even in this first phase and in phase two. He touched slightly on my biggest concern now, and I'm going off my script here, but Mr. Graff spoke a little bit about the not necessarily the first responders or the fire suppression, but the actual toxic gases that are emitted with these things. And it's still they've worked with, like you said, Arizona Fire Medical, Peoria Fire Department, their planning department, I think City of Surprise.
We've informed them, but through, chairman and members of the commission, yes, through the AFMA, we've alerted all the fire authority.
Okay. Anyways, very high-tech fire suppression systems, alarm systems. With that said, in all of my discussions with all these experts, and then doing my own side research with experts that are familiar with these things, it's very new technology still. For years now, I've asked for different studies and from different companies, and as you all know, I'm jumping around here again, but we've approved not only battery plants, but recently a hydrogen generating facility and all kinds of things. And I applaud this kind of new technology and everything. But I guess the bottom line is that when we approved these other ones, one, for instance, was further west. It was sandwiched between, they got approved, a battery plant was sandwiched between a landfill and state land. Or we've approved other ones that are the clearest residents are a mile away. In this case, though, the subdivision he referenced across the street is 249 homes. It's a county subdivision, and Coldwater Ranch that's existing was there first. These other cases that we approved, it's the opposite. So I guess my hypothetical there is the battery plants built and then subdivisions come in after. That's their risk and whether or not they want to build one of these or live next to one of these things. Mr. Graff also mentioned that there's been no opposition, which I am still completely sort of perplexed over because of the potential danger of these things, even with these safety things being built into them. And I guess my theory there is they met with the HOA, they put out notices within 500 feet. And in these conversations, why isn't anybody showing up? Or they had one individual, as you mentioned, that's been in opposition or was in opposition of it or expressed concern, and nobody else. And the only thing I can come up with is, and if it had not been for the fact of the accident that my firefighter nephew was in, I would have no idea or have spent as much time on this either. Nobody knows what these things are all about. Um, um, going through my notes here. Sorry. Like he mentioned, the closest one now is, what is it for this last phase? 492 feet. So a couple football fields away. And I guess my hypothetical there is it seems like a long distance, but it's a couple football fields away. And my hypothetical there is you're out camping, different technology. I understand all that. You start a campfire and somebody's 200 or 300 yards away. You can't tell me that you're not going to smell the campfire at some point if the wind's blowing in the right direction. So the hypothetical that I asked these folks, and again, it looks like a CNN thing where there's 20 people on this Zoom call. And I asked them, I call it the stupid hypothetical, but if their safety systems and alarms fail, and if the prevailing winds are blowing towards these homes that are to the north, a couple football fields away, and it's 1 o'clock in the morning, and it's nice out, and people have their bedroom windows open, and worst case scenario, obviously, I think these things are obviously much safer than they've ever been. And I wrote as part of my notes, and I didn't see him on this list here, but I think it was an engineer for AES, Mike S. was on the Zoom call. And I asked that hypothetical. And I said, excuse me, if one of you folks were living within a couple of football fields away from this project, would you have a problem, excuse me, sleeping in one of those bedrooms across the street with your window open? And the quote from Mike S., whoever that is, was exactly this. He says, that would be a cause for concern if that were to happen. So I guess my point there is it's not highly likely that it's going to happen, but there's always that possibility. And I'm going to welcome Mr. Graff to rebut what I'm saying here. But the next thing, and I apologize for this, but this is very important to me. When he came before us in 2021, we approved this thing. I made the motion to approve it. In our charge that day, I asked staff, our charge that day, and I believe is the case today, we're approving the zoning. If the zoning gets approved here, it goes to the Board of Supervisors. Board of Supervisors approves zoning. At that point, that's when it's administratively approved to move to the next part of the process. I believe that's correct. Correct me if I'm wrong. I wrote an email after the Board of Supervisors approved phase 1 and 2 on June 14th, 2021, and I'm not going to read the whole thing, I promise. And just confirming of what transpired there with what I just said, that it was, and it had, I think it was almost simultaneous that the Board of Supervisors approved zoning, and then it was phase 1 and 2 were administratively approved. And it was Sean Watkins, and I copied everybody and their brother. A lot of people are sitting in this room here. But to get to the last part, the meat of my email here, and again, this was directed to everybody in an email form, and I asked for it to be part of that zoning case, entered into the zoning case. And I'll just paraphrase here, but I expressed very serious concerns on the record about the proposed use for the property during the Planning Commission hearing on May 13th, 2021. It was pointed out that the Planning Commission's charge that day, I'm repeating myself, but was simply to approve, deny, or continue the zoning case before us. It was also under my understanding, based on the feedback we received, that the actual proposed use was not to be considered at that time. The Planning Commission was solely voting on whether or not the vote to approve or deny the proposed zone change from R43 to Industrial 2 IUPD. Based on that direction, the applicant's presentation, the dialogue between staff, the applicant, and the commission, I subsequently made the motion to approve the zoning which was approved unanimously. And then skipping further in my email, due to my concern following the Planning Commission hearing, I had extensive conversations with multiple experts regarding this proposed project and its technology. And again, it's improved since then. But based on those conversations, I discovered several potential dangers associated with this technology that should be alarming to anyone and disturbs me greatly. And then in parentheses, specifically with the use of lithium-ion batteries or whatever they're putting in them these days, I don't know. As I stated on the record, my concern is not only for the first responders should an emergency occur, but for the surrounding residents in the area. Without exception, I was told by all the experts that I spoke to, quote, it's not a matter of if, but a matter of when one of these battery pods will catch on fire. Should that occur, there is not only the potential for fire and possible explosion, but the emissions of very toxic gases. In that event, it was described to me that depending on wind speed and direction, current weather, and other conditions at such time, and then I highlighted this, the gases emitted could potentially cause serious harm and injury or even possibly death. And the last part of this email was, for the record, I'm not opposed to this new technology. I actually applaud it and the use of the other alternative energy sources. I do, however, vehemently oppose this project due to the close proximity to the existing and future single-family residential development in the area. I feel that it is my duty to make you fully aware of the potential risks associated with this project, as well as future projects that are surely coming our way, which is where we're at today. And I'll wrap it up here. I guess I've said enough here, but I'd like to open it up to the other commissioners. I've told this to Mr. Graff a dozen times now, but this phase 1, phase 2, and this new phase 3, the first phases are under construction. And the lack of community knowledge of the potential danger here, however remote it may be, there's still that, they will acknowledge that there is still that possibility. I think he told me the other day it's 1 in 3,000 plant lifetimes that this would occur. I don't know the answer to that. It's such new technology. I don't know that anybody really knows the answer to that. They can make reports and studies, but I don't know the answer to that. And it just truly gives me a stomach ache. And I went on here because I want to make sure it's on the record that if one day there's an accident, at least I can say that I looked out for the public here, because I think they're in the dark on this technology. And again, but for the fact of its proximity to this existing subdivision, I wouldn't have a problem with it at all. So with that, I don't want to make a motion here, but I would like to hear comments from my fellow commissioners. Thank you for putting up with all that. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Commissioner Schlosser. I got a couple questions for you too, Mr. Graff. Have there been any failures since 2019?
So an example would be, and I think it's an example to be proud of, an example would be a facility in Chandler. So there was I believe a 2022 battery fire in Chandler. What was interesting about that site is that was some of the same old technology that you saw at McMeekin, because that was built way before even the McMeekin incident. Why I think that's one to be proud of is, and let me just first state, it obviously wasn't my place to share, Commissioner Schlosser's event regarding his nephew. I wouldn't have ever taken the lead on that, but I do want to acknowledge it and thank him for sharing that with our team and with the AES team. And we've been talking with Commissioner Schlosser on that issue for a few years. So, but it wasn't my place to mention that, of course. But because of that tragedy, the way that incident in Chandler was responded to resulted in 0 injuries. There were nearby homes. I won't use your question to answer one of the things. I'll get into it later, but there were nearby homes. There was no inhalation danger, no danger to the public, no injury to the public. And the first responders were able to handle the fire without any injury. Because again, sadly, they had learned and new procedures were in place to deal with it from a distance. That was a very kind of apples and oranges. That was a closed warehouse that had batteries inside of it. For kind of a big no-no now. That's why you see these as an open field with the containers. But that's one example. It resulted in 0 injuries.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to add one last thing on. Again, I'd like to hear from my fellow commissioners, but for the record, with the exception of the chairman, I've spoken to no other commissioners about this case or anything. So other than talking to staff, I mistakenly thought it was on consent, but I've spoken to the chairman to let him know that I needed some extra time here. But other than that, I've spoken. So I have no idea that the opinions of the other commissioners, but I would be interested in hearing what their thoughts are.
Okay, is there anybody else from the commission that would like to have some questions of Mr. Graff before he tackles Commissioner Schlosser's comments? All right, hearing none, Mr. Graff will give you a couple minutes if you would like to address anything from Commissioner Schlosser.
Absolutely. And I hate to even call it a rebuttal because it's a conversation and it's an ongoing conversation that Commissioner Schlosser.
Mutual respect on
Absolutely,
both sides.
100%. I've never had a case like this. I've never had a case where we get to talk with somebody whose family's been directly impacted by a technology, and I'm able to testify and learn from the process everything that my client and the industry has done to learn from what happened to Commissioner Schlosser's family. It's my team would laugh if I ever said I'm at a loss for words, and I certainly have some things to say. But I think my momentary loss of words is just out of respect for the situation. I can adamantly guarantee you that the need for this technology is here. It's in line with the state's goals, with APS's goals. And one really important point is I'm very aware, and I remember Commissioner Schlosser's email that he ran that he read to the record. An important point is my recollection is the stipulation that you see in blue was created and drafted in between the email you just sent and the Board of Supervisors approval, if I'm remembering it correctly, meaning we worked on that stipulation to address some of those final concerns, because what would address the concerns would be is if the fire authority is the last vote on this use. They're the last ones to say this is safe or this is a no-go. And that's why that stipulation, at least at the time in the recollection from that case, brought us to a unanimous approval at the Board of Supervisors, not because we of course ignored that email or any concerns, but because we put that language in place. And it's the same situation here. If we don't continue to earn the trust from the planning staff and then eventually the fire department on this final phase, it won't receive building permits. And Chairman Commissioner Schlosser, although the plan of development is administratively approved by staff, the site plan after this phase, there are no building permits and there are no certificates of occupancy without the sign off from the fire department. And in fact, just for the record, I won't dwell on it, but I'd like the two of you and other commissioners to have a copy. I'll hand this to staff. What I'm handing out is the actual letter, the actual result of stipulation H, now stipulation E, which was a letter from Chief Creever of the AFMA that had to be issued before we could pull a single building permit. And that letter, Chairman, Commissioner Schlosser, members of the commission, that is the result of all the work that you personally, Chairman Schlosser or Commissioner Schlosser, put into that original case. It made it so that the fire authority had to sign off on what we were doing, and they drastically reduced the number of batteries. They said 200 megawatts of output was not the level that they wanted because it didn't give enough room for fire response. So regardless of how you vote today, again, I've never had a case like this, so I'm going to say a phrase that seems just more personal. I think you should be very proud of that STIP and very proud of that letter, because we still have to get that letter on 2B and on 2A, those final phases. We have to get that letter, and the fire authority has to say that our technology is safe, or we don't move forward. So that stays in place regardless of your vote today. If I can, if you'll just entertain me for 2 slides, because Commissioner Schlosser made a couple really good points that I want to point out. So we did focus a lot on first responder safety today. So let me turn very specifically to the community and frankly, something that Commissioner Schlosser pushed our team to accomplish. So there's 2 types of tests that have been completed since one of the early conference calls with Commissioner Schlosser. And by the way, just to maybe clarify that point that the engineer had made in that, as you stated, Commissioner Schlosser, your scenario is what if all safety features fail? And so I'm not sure if that response was in regard to the safety of the homes, or just it would be problematic if all the safety features failed, right? But your recollection is correct on the statement. It's just I think it may have been focused a lot on, well, what if all safety features fail, because that would be an anomaly. So what we looked at as 2 types of things is first is a burn test. So what's a burn test? So literally Chief Criver, Chief Olmstead's predecessor, required us to pull out 2 of these battery units. These aren't mock-ups. These are the real things. They're about $1.2 million each. Chief Criver from the AFMA for phases 1 and 2 had us pull out 2 of those. It was, I believe, in Texas in a safe area, and set fire to one. So set fire to $1.2 million, and have the second one right next to it, as it would be on a site. Why is that important? It's because the real danger isn't one battery catching on fire. The real danger is propagation. It is a domino effect. And the entire system and safety procedures put in place for this type of facility are all aimed, of course, at avoiding fire, but hyper aimed at avoiding the domino effect. And our burn tests have shown time and time again that when you set one of these on fire, the second one next to it doesn't set on fire. And that's because of all of the redundancies. So let's talk about, though, what happens if one sets on fire with our neighborhood to the north. So the other thing we did not have in early conversations with Chairman Schlosser, and we do have now, and this has now been shared with the AFMA, as we did what's called a plume study. So what that yellow circle shows is that under the plume study, the concentrations of the gases and output from one battery being on fire is dangerous to human consumption, meaning breath, within 50 meters. So the danger is in there, and let's just double it to be cautious. So within 100 meters of a battery, you absolutely have to have protective gear on. If you're within there and you're breathing, you're in trouble. And that's why it would be evacuated if there's any employees. That's why any first responders in that area would be wearing the protective gear. But our plume study shows that even with prevailing winds to the north, by the time the smoke, whatever you want to call it, the emissions would get to the neighborhood and the rise, there's, and I'm not a math guy, but I've looked at the study. As you watch the plume rise, it dissipates to a harmless level by the time it gets to the neighborhood. According to our plume study, therefore, there wouldn't be a technical reason to even evacuate the neighborhood. I'm not saying the fire department wouldn't do it as a precaution, but from a safety feature. So I just hope you can see from this, we've taken these questions very seriously. These are public studies that are available. We are very comfortable that the neighbors to the north are safe. And I'll just end by stating, in a case like this, with a second presentation before the same commission and the prior approvals of phase 1 and phase 2, if I can be so bold, I think the reason for a denial would be as if something's happened in the interim where we've lost the faith of the county. We've lost the faith of the commissioners, or something we said we would do didn't happen. And I frankly see the opposite every step of the way here. The technology has gotten better. The accident that occurred at McMeekin cannot occur on this site in any of the phases. It's just simply no longer possible due to that. And the stipulation and the fact that the AFMA, after Board of Supervisor approval, was able to change our site plan shows that we made good on all of our promises. We allowed the AFMA to drastically, it would be like if the AFMA said to a multifamily developer, we're not letting you do 200 units, you're going to do 150. And yeah, it hit the bottom line of this project, but there was no argument from us because that was what we agreed to. So I'll end with that. And mainly with just nothing but absolute respect for Chairman, obviously, and Commissioner Schlosser and your family. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Graff. All right. All right. Is there any, we'll ask the commission one more time. Is there any more, any questions for the applicant? All right, hearing. Oh, sorry, go ahead,
I
Commissioner.
think I put everybody to sleep with my statement.
All right, we will proceed with in-person speakers, then allow those registered online to speak. After public comment, we'll allow time for rebuttal. I don't believe we have anybody here. David, is there anybody online?
There's no one online.
All right, sounds good. So with that, we'll close the public forum. Do any of the commissioners have anything that they would like to say? All right, I got a couple things to say here. I think when this case came before us a couple years ago, you know, our biggest concern was the safety of first responders. I feel like the technology has changed, and that concern is, you know, has been mitigated. I think this time around, the biggest concern was the gases that could be off-put from, you know, a disaster here. And to be completely honest with you, that quite frankly scares me. However, the case before us is zoning. Is this a good zone change from RU43 to industrial? And as much as I am not a fan of the use, I feel like the zoning is in line, and you know, I do back the zoning, but I'm very against the use of the land. But I'm sure that makes everything a little bit complicated for the other commissioners. But if nobody has anything else to say outside of that, I would entertain a motion from someone in the commission at this point. Okay, hearing none, I guess I will take this upon myself. I make a motion to make a recommendation of approval for Z2023119.
This is Vice Chair Limblom. Oh, okay, go ahead.
Yes, Commissioner Lindblom.
I was going to second, but Commissioner Montoya got there, so she's got the second.
Okay, I didn't hear Commissioner Montoya, but we'll say first by Chairman Hernandez and a second by Commissioner Lindblom. I'm sorry, Vice Chair Lindblom. Are there any comments regarding this motion? All right, hearing none. Rosalie, let's take a roll call vote.
Commissioner Arnett, Commissioner Arnett, Commissioner Curley,
Yes.
Commissioner Lawrence,
Yes.
Commissioner Montoya,
Yes.
Commissioner Swart,
Yes.
Commissioner Schlosser.
Very super briefly, I just, in good conscience, no offense, to AES or Mr. Graff, I just can't vote for this thing, so I vote no. And I fully respect all the other commissioners that wish to speak, vote in favor of it. I just can't do it. Thank you.
Vice Chair Lindblom,
I'm a yes, and just like to say, I really respect Commissioner Schlosser. I appreciate his comment of saying he respects them all. I am looking at this from a zoning perspective, and I'm a yes for that reason. Thank you.
I heard it.
Was that a yes or a no?
I am a yes.
Yes, thank you. Chairman Hernandez,
Yes.
Commissioner Arnett, are you on the line? He must have dropped off.
Early.
He chatted with Rachel that his vote is a yes.
Okay, his vote's a yes. Thank you. Chairman, we have a motion recommending approval by a vote of 7-1.
All right. Thank you, Rosalie. All right. Is requesting staff if there's any other matters?
Mr. Chairman, 3 items real quickly. First, your February 22nd zipper meeting is canceled. So you get one day off. Secondly, just wanted to, on behalf of the department, thank all the commissioners. We had a quorum scare this morning, and it looked like we weren't going to have a quorum, and we put calls in with minutes before this hearing was going to start, and everybody responded, particularly Commissioners Arnett and Lindblom called in from travels, and Commissioner Curley called in from the delivery room where his wife is having a child.
Wow.
And I appreciate that because I cut my short vacation short to come here to this hearing today. So thank you, all the commissioners that stepped up.
And finally, we failed to remind you that you need to approve the minutes from December 7th, 2022.
Oh, okay. What'd you say, December 7th?
Yes.
All right. Does anybody have any comments regarding the minutes from December 7th? All right, hearing none, those are approved. And with that, I'd just like to say, it's great to see that people can have a conversation and come to a resolution. So with that, we'll adjourn the meeting at 11:18.
Bye, everybody.